Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to welcome you to today's module on the pay-as-you-go revolution in the off-grid solar sector. I would like to thank the International Solar Alliance and the Clean Energy Solutions Center who facilitate this webinar series. Some background for me. I'm responsible for energy in the consulting firm Factor. I joined the company in 2014, and I have been previously director in IRENA for knowledge, policy, and finance. And in IRENA, I was responsible for the program on off-grid. Previously in the Spanish government, I was also involved in different policies at national and European level. We are continue with this lecture is within the module 7 on solar off-grid, and is particularly focused in the pay-as-you-go business model for solar home system for off-grid. In this module, we will always start with a brief description and definition of what pay-as-you-go represents, and afterwards we will jump into the main body of the presentation. Don't forget, at the end of the presentation, you will have the opportunity to test your knowledge with a little quiz. The learning objectives, which is this module on pay-as-you-go for access, aim to provide are an introduction to the functioning of pay-as-you-go business models, a discussion of the founding needs of pay-as-you-go company, an analysis of pay-as-you-go business model specification landscape, an evaluation of the pay-as-you-go market. Pay-as-you-go is pioneering, game-changing digital credit system that removes the initial financial barrier to solar energy access by allowing consumers to make a series of modest payments to purchase solar energy rather than paying upfront for the entire solar lighting system. PAYGO is emerging as a solution that addresses both end consumers' affordability and provides sufficient margins to fuel operational models that can scale. The pay-as-you-go business model, in previous lecture, we have talked about the tremendous access gap that needs to be closed. Private off-grid renewable energy providers can play a huge role in this regard. However, their business operation, and especially their business's profitability, are limited by the bankability of their potential consumer base. Rural households often lack the collateral and the financial power to obtain solar systems. The traditionally required upfront investment is deemed unaffordable. The predominantly most prominent solution to this problem is pay-as-you-go financing. A pay-as-you-go company essentially rents consumers a solar home system that comes with a battery, a charge controller, a solar panel, LED bulbs, and mobile chargers. Basic systems have enough power to charge phones and lights, and larger ones could power small appliances like radios and TVs. The first approaches of this business model were tested already in 2010 in East Africa. The concept has developed into a continuously growing worldwide industry. On the following slide, we will have a look at how the pay-as-you-go technology achieves what it promises. We will also look at the pros and cons of the business approach, because pay-as-you-go not only helps underprivileged consumers to finance their solar products, but essentially transforms every aspect of the value chain. Last but not least, we will analyze the market, its growth path, and its likely future. Put very simple, in the pay-as-you-go approach, customers pay only for the electricity they use, most often through a mobile money infrastructure. The hardware in the solar device regulates usage services when the customer prepay is used up or expires. Under some pay-as-you-go model, the device permanently unlocks at the end of the lease period and ownership is transferred to the end customer. Difference along the financial model spectrum will be discussed in a minute. One decisive aspect of the pay-as-you-go revolution is the automated data collection on a massive scale that is accompanying the growth of the model. On the one hand, the digitalized and network-based process allows pay-as-you-go operation to learn about the industry. This data is highly important for the sector as a whole. Being a relatively new industry, there is limited information around market size, effective policy incentives, business model, or dynamic financial and operational performance of pay-as-you-go companies. For example, the World Bank and the International Financial Corporation, together with the Global Off-Grid Lighting Association, GOGLA, and its members, have developed a key performance indicator framework for the pay-as-you-go solar off-grid sector. The framework seeks to increase transparency around operational and business model performance of energy services providers, expand market data availability and reliability, and ultimately enable a more robust understanding of the sector. A KPI framework can be a basis for the development of financial vehicles, operational toolkits, and policy programs that are critical for the sector's growth. Once fully implemented, it will enable the establishment of new industry standards and well-defined indicators that quantify the major risk factor, but also are practical to compute given the industry data collection capacity, and are useful for both pay-as-you-go company and financer as a starting point for identifying and assessing investment opportunity. But on the other hand, the collection of consumers' data raises issues of privacy, as customer details are often collected without the customer's full acknowledgement. Pay-as-you-go companies require their customers to sign contracts when registering for credit, and there is some evidence that some customers either don't understand the full nature and value of the information collected, or on occasion do not provide their consent. According to data collected by Acumen, the impact fund investor, 27% of pay-as-you-go solar home system customers felt that the agent did not explain the contract to them adequately during the sign-up procedure, and 30% say the parts of the payment plan were unclear. Another concern arises from the subsequent usage of customers' data. For example, pay-as-you-go players spoke of the ability to tell if a wedding was coming up in a village based on electricity usage pattern alone, which could prompt advertisement for a wedding loan to make the wedding grander. Some investors will see this as a measure of progress, potentially representing loan sharks, while others will consider it irresponsible. One reason from the attractiveness of the model is because its consumers have a higher lifetime value. This slide shows the 8-year journey of the average consumer that had decided to obtain electrification service in 2010, distinguished by business model. With the cash-based model, where the consumer traditionally pays for the hardware upfront, the customer is likely to only buy entry-level PAYGO systems in the beginning, given the relatively lower upfront cost. In the case-based model, the customer is estimated to eventually also upgrade to some mid-range solar home system technology, however, only to a late point in time. When summing up, a company supplying this customer over 8 years technology, his or her purchase will generate an estimated revenue of less than $400. It has also been remembered that customers are more likely to switch providers when they are not bound to them via an standing contract, such that product upgrades may not even manifest necessarily with the original service and good provider. With the pay-as-you-go business model, the lifetime value of a customer is larger, and the revenue generated from one customer in this period is more than 3 times as much. Pay-as-you-go is relaxing the norm that customers will only spend up to 2 to 3 months of saved disposable income on a given product. Companies often have an internal energy product ladder that not only caters to customers' different willingness to pay, but also includes customers to migrate from basic to more future-rich products over time. A couple of words of funding needs and profitability. The pay-as-you-go sector is the magnet of funding in the distributed energy services sector. Founders are more willing to support pay-as-you-go solar home system business models. The relative share of funds going to pay-as-you-go companies has increased rapidly. In 2012, pay-as-you-go companies accounted for 31% of total funds raised. This crossed 90% by 2017. Overall, from 2012 to 2017, pay-as-you-go businesses raised $773 million US dollar, equal to 85% of all the funds raised by off-grid technologies. This is also reflected in a survey of funders for which funds are presented in this graph. With a score out of 5, clearly pay-as-you-go companies are portrayed as the business model most able to raise funds. However, pay-as-you-go models are also more demanding of investments. Pay-as-you-go models have historically required multiple rounds of financing for upfront investment and working capital. As a result, the investment needs for a pay-as-you-go company can be up to 8 times that of cash shell-based companies. There are mainly 2 reasons. First of all, the pay-as-you-go business creates affordability by extending a consumer loan, which, however, needs to be financed. According to the Global Off-Grid Lighting Association, GOGLA, these need to fund receivables can range from 35 to 65 US dollars company, or even higher. As some recent transactions have shown, in comparison, a supplier dealing in cash shell may require from 3 to 10 US million dollars for funding inventories. The second reason is that vertically integrating pay-as-you-go companies required early financing to create extensive distribution network and to develop the software platforms and technology that enable pay-as-you-go financing and allow companies to shut down devices in case of non-payment of the installment. With more than 5 years needed for pay-as-you-go companies to reach profitability, the portrayed success of the sector can be seen as somewhat surprising and is by some regarded as a hype that is going to burst. For the industry as a whole, the fact that the first pay-as-you-go company are reaching a state of maturity also means that the type of funding that it is required is changing. Portrayed a bit more clearly than in the graph on the slide before, we see here the growth of specific funding needs of distributed energy services companies in general. Distributed energy services providers can choose funding through equity, local or international debt. Equity and grants are the main source of funding available for startups. Within time and larger scale, funding needs to shift to more local deposits and external borrowings, increasing the financial leverage. Vertically integrated pay-as-you-go companies over time are likely to have a visible different funding structure in place, one that is characterized by a significant increase in terms of local debt as well as foreign debt financing, a relatively but not absolute decrease in terms of equity. In fact, many companies continue to emphasize equity needs in the short term for building the debt finance foundation and possibly allowing existing pioneer investors to exit from the sector, which the market has not seen yet. For the maturing pay-as-you-go businesses, local finance will be important, but it is not yet a strong finance component in the sector. Existing transaction always involves some sort of DFI guarantee and tend to be cumbersome to arrange. Local lenders are conservative and usually emphasize past performance over future projections. This is partially also regulation-driven, since local banking regulation emphasizes the protection of depositors. Internal lending standards often require supervisory approval for bigger loans and are therefore harder to get. Because of these obstacles, local banks risk losing to participate in the early stage of the off-grid solar market, leaving opportunity to cross-border finance specialists. Local lending, in principle, is the most suitable way of finance for pay-as-you-go companies, since their income streams are denominated in local currency as well, such that currency mismatch risk is avoided. The anticipated developments in data-driven KPIs will hugely benefit the sector in this regard. The pay-as-you-go revolution has also been accompanied by attempts to structure finance for distributed energy services providers. A prominent example is that of using a special purpose vehicle. In a securitization, the pay-as-you-go company sells an existing pool of customers to a special purpose vehicle owned entirely by investors. The customer receivables serve as a collateral for the investor who owns the SPV through investor notes. The financing flows from the investors through the SPV to the pay-as-you-go company. All future receivable payments flow from the system pool of customers to the SPV. While this represents a suitable way to leverage the working capital needs of pay-as-you-go company to scale and expand their operation, this model is more complicated to set up and also depends on local policy frameworks. It has to be seen how standardized reporting measures and KPI frameworks can formalize this process and also enable emerging players to have access to structured finance. We will now turn to the pay-as-you-go specification landscape, which is meant to describe different types of pay-as-you-go business models. Pay-as-you-go businesses can vary in their form and multiple dimensions. As part of this model, we will look at different forms of solar home system ownership that consumers can obtain by portraying the full spectrum of financial models. The form of ownership is linked to the length of lease and the mode of payment with, as we will discuss, the majority of pay-as-you-go businesses model adopting a rent-to-own approach financed by consumers through mobile money and a 1 to 2 year lease contract. An important aspect of pay-as-you-go company is the activity of companies along the value chain. The first companies active in the pay-as-you-go model follow a highly integrated approach, and still a majority continue to do so, using their own in-house proprietary technology platforms. In this model, we will discuss why this is the case and whether it is likely to change in the future. The choices that players make along the dimensions mentioned above point to the major business models that are emerging and constantly evolving. The following slides shows some combination of these choices that potentially are likely to scale further and dominate the sector in the coming years. First of all, there are vertically integrated energy services providers, which are quasi-utility providers and control most aspects of the value chain, from product design to payment collection. During the nascent stage of the pay-as-you-go industry, most new entrants choose to invest heavily in all parts of the value chain to compensate for the lack of suitable partners and to control the customer experience as they innovate to find an optimal business model. We will discuss the issue of these vertically integrated providers in the following. The banker topology describes business models that focus on customer-facing function of the value chain, including sales, credit assessment, payment recruitment, and after-sales service. PAYG Africa exemplifies this typology, procuring products from established off-grid players, and then investing in infrastructure to support customer acquisition and management. Going forward, the market may see increased emergence of such models driven both by existing vertically integrated players shifting focus to the downstream value and new entrants drawn into the market by the excitement surrounding pay-as-you-go are looking to shorten their time to market by procuring existing products. Last but not least, the value chain specialists who focus on specializing in one upstream aspect of the value chain. Later on, we will look at PAYG, a German company specialized in pay-as-you-go ecosystem. Let's now look at the aspect of the pay-as-you-go business model that defines the specification landscape. This graph shows the full spectrum of financing model. However, please note that the right side does not apply to pay-as-you-go model. The spectrum of this model that does apply to pay-as-you-go starts with prepay and rental setup in which consumers have very limited ownership or commitment to the appliance. Moving away from the solar as a service aspect are the perpetual lease and lease-to-own business model. The lease-to-own business model, which is the more widespread out of the two, includes monthly payment according to a preset payment plan which concludes in consumer ownership. This incentive is often most effective when the prospective timeline to ownership is short, thus reducing the risk of default. Transfer the ownership acts as an incentive for customers to complete payments. Many of the customers are not used to the idea of paying for energy as a service and is in a perpetual lease model and require this incentive. In theory, this pay-as-you-go could be operated also in the absence of mobile money infrastructure, for example, through dedicated credit salesmen, which, however, would add further overheads. In East Africa, almost all pay-as-you-go providers rely on mobile money. Outside East Africa, however, this model of payment is complicated by lower penetration of mobile money and many customers and familiarity with using it even when it is available, often leading to the building up of arrears and debts. Some players have innovated their technology to accommodate payments through mobile airtime. While this innovation lends itself to scalability, going forward, it may run into regulatory challenges. As said before, others rely on cash payment that customers hand to repayment agents. This method leads to high costs accrued from agent commission, transportation, security, and administrative costs for tracking payments, which increases as operations move to less dense areas. On the other hand, mobile money has been rapidly expanding and is likely to continue to do so, paving the way for pay-as-you-go companies. In some countries, such as India, efforts to push the mobile money adoption are even governmentally supported. An interesting effect of the expansion of pay-as-you-go business model in the off-grid electrification sector is the impact it is having on financial inclusion. While mobile money infrastructure is a clear precondition for pay-as-you-go business model to work, the acceptance and use of mobile money services is simultaneously advanced by the expansion of electrification services offered through pay-as-you-go business model, as researched by CGAP from 2015 shows. In some countries, up to 50% of new customers of pay-as-you-go company has opened their first mobile wallet in order to obtain the solar home system. In other words, usage of pay-as-you-go energy services is propelling financial inclusion. This promoted access to formal finance services is directly driven financial inclusion, but there is more. A customer that has unlocked his solar home system device completely after financing it over time through small installments and prepaid payment is able to use it as a collateral for obtaining other credits. A often quoted problem of the pay-as-you-go company is the extent of vertical integration that it is happening along their value chain. As we have seen before, it is among the main reasons for the huge investment need of these business models. According to the Global Lighting Association, almost 70% of known pay-as-you-go operators are vertically integrated, while less than a third have chosen to outsource part of the value chain. In other words, most pay-as-you-go businesses are making or assembling their own product, distribute their own product, create the technology platform for running pay-as-you-go operation, and run an effective lending bank. In the early days of the sector, integration was driven by the absence of alternative. If it doesn't exist, build it, was the credo of early renewable energy service providers. Today, vertical integration is mainly driven by the need to control customer experience across the value chain, given that quality long-term customer relations, which drive payment recovery and upselling, are crucial to the business model and the high lifetime value of customers that we have seen before. Clearly, however, it is difficult to excel in all parts of the value chain, and hence efficiency losses are likely to be incurred. Further, an industry led by a strongly integrated business imposes cost-related barriers to entry to newer startups. For example, according to the Global Lighting Association, a typical supplier has invested between $1 to $10 million in developing proprietary software to manage payments and gather usage data. Naturally, this is very difficult for new players to compete with, as a high cost of human resources in the broad range of functions the pay-as-you-go business operates in along the value chain are a financial barrier to those to enter the market. These human resources costs include the commission for sales team, the salary of repositioned personnel, post-sale service, and also all those experts that work in the specialized functions that carry the company, such as design, finance, marketing, to name a few. The industry has since called for the unbundling of the verticalization of value chains. Instead of trying to do it all, pay-as-you-go solar companies are now looking to specialize in one or two pieces of the solar puzzle, including hardware, software, distribution, consumers, financing, and value-added services. If successful, this unbundling will create more product options and greater flexibility for distributors, financial services providers, and end consumers of solar energy. This unbundling lowers the startup costs for new entrants, which allow a second generation of pay-as-you-go operators to enter the market more easily and nimbly without building or owning their own hardware or software. This, in turn, allows these companies to further specialize in particular elements of the value chain, such as distribution, consumer finance, or value-added services. Those who are familiar with the previous lecture on access to electricity through off-grid technology will know how important this greater flexibility of new pay-as-you-go operators can be in time and markets where low-hanging fruits are scarce. An example of the unbuilding of vertically integrated pay-as-you-go model is Mobisol's ecosystem. To show how pay-as-you-go can facilitate business operation beyond the processing of transactions, we will take a look at the case of PAYG, a racing pay-as-you-go operator that promises to provide a fully integrated ecosystem. PAYG has been launched by Mobisol and provides what could be termed the operating system of the pay-as-you-go solar industry. Running on this computer as well as mobile devices, the software suite is is the digital key for pay-as-you-go business model, paving the way for the efficient management of the entire pay-as-you-go value chain through a single information hub. Available modules as part of the software suite cover the full value chain, providing control and leveraging the data that is generated in the process. The clear benefit of having such a software suite is that it allows for remote access and control of pay-as-you-go products. And most importantly, it minimizes operational costs and empowers sales force. The ability of both small startups and established players to drive down overhead costs is defining for their profitability as a business model in a challenging environment in which they are operating. The PAYG suite is hardware agnostic, meaning distributors and manufacturers have a choice for their preferred pay-as-you-go platform, including full data ownership. So far, we have seen what pay-as-you-go is and what it can be. In the next couple of slides, we will look at the market in general, its geographical distribution, and think about how it will develop in the future. Thus far, growth has been limited to countries with strong mobile money ecosystems, with particular crowding in East Africa. This signals both high growth potential in the future, but also the challenges of operating successfully in different regulatory environments. Several countries in West and Central Africa, especially Nigeria and the Democratic Republic of Congo, are already showing healthy mobile money growth. India, the largest off-grid solar market in the world, currently has very low pay-as-you-go penetration, corresponding largely to its minimal mobile money market and relatively low uptake of solar home systems to date. It is, however, poised for significant growth in mobile and digital transactions over the next 5 years. Mobile money has proved the most streamlined mechanism of payment for pay-as-you-go operators. But as pay-as-you-go technology and business model mature and diversify, digital money may be less of a constraint. What will ultimately be a determinant of the pace of dissemination of technology is the ability and willingness of lenders and investors to fund the scaling of the system business model across borders, as well as the ideas and market entries of new businesses. Pay-as-you-go solar uptake roughly doubled every year, but recently slowed. The customer base of pay-as-you-go solar home system amounted to 1.5 million homes by October 2017, driven by readily available mobile money system and over $200 million of investment in 2016. The industry has grown faster than most of its companies. However, as a small number of new entrants such as Delight and Ignite Power grew rapidly. Maintaining the pace seen in the past will require the leaders to grow more aggressively. It lies in the nature of off-grid companies that many of the areas they are active in are barely touched in terms of previously existing services offered. As such, it takes great effort to build up the distribution network and expand operations, especially in areas where fruits are not hanging as low as they have been in areas with already saturated markets. Self-Foundation has also found that consumers may value electricity less than anticipated by business hoping for low default rates. Especially in cases of bad harvest, it was found to be for farmers to quickly back down from their payment plans. As discussed before, those high overhead costs represent a barrier for businesses expansion and new entry alike, one that drains on the profitability of companies in the industry. Last but not least, it is hence not surprising that one of the most defining challenges for the sector will remain to overcome the persistent lack of capital. To conclude, I want to say the following. Pay-as-you-go definitely presents an innovative technology, one that allows business model to theoretically provide solar home system to rural customers' profitability, and that allow pay-as-you-go companies to scale quickly. However, pay-as-you-go companies desperately depend on patient funding sources that are willing and able to finance the operation of the business model. These funding sources are more and more sold locally and internationally in the form of debt finance, but the long journey to profitability of pay-as-you-go company remains deterring of potential investors. Pay-as-you-go companies are naturally strongly vertically integrated. The unbundling of inefficient company structure may result in the emergence of specialists and spur innovative and sustainable goods and services provision. If this is the case, and investors are not losing the appetite for the impactful and eventually profitable business in the solar off-grid sector, then the market will have the chance to sustain and grow sustainability. At this point, we come to the end of this module on pay-as-you-go solar. I would like to thank you for your attention. As before, you invited your understanding of the contents in the following small tips. Thank you.